A retired 65-year-old female Air Force pilot steps up to Donald Trump at a charity event. She hands him an envelope. What's inside will leave you speechless. Find out how this simple gesture changed the lives of thousands of veterans. The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., casting a golden glow over the towering buildings and the bustling streets of the nation's capital. The air was thick with excitement as people gathered for one of the most anticipated charity events of the year. The red carpet was rolled out, photographers stood at the ready, and the guests, many of them well-known political figures and celebrities, walked past the flashing cameras with smiles and polite waves. But in the crowd that had gathered, there was one woman who stood apart, a woman who wasn't interested in the glitz and glamour of the event. She wasn't there for recognition, nor was she there to meet powerful people. She had a much more important mission. Her name was Sarah Thompson, a 65-year-old retired U.S. Air Force pilot. Sarah had spent over 30 years serving her country, breaking barriers as one of the few women in the Air Force to fly combat missions. She had lived through the dangers of war, the complexities of military life, and the challenges that came with being a woman in a male-dominated field. She had seen it all, and yet she never sought fame or recognition for her service. She was proud of her career, but there was something much more important now. Sarah's heart was heavy as she walked through the event, her mind focused on the reason she was there. She wasn't interested in the speeches or the formalities of the evening. Today wasn't about the accolades or the awards. Today was about a cause that was deeply personal to her. She had spent the last few years after her retirement working with fellow veterans, especially women who had served in the armed forces. Many of them, like Sarah, faced obstacles that most civilians couldn't even imagine, struggling with PTSD, physical injuries, financial hardship, and the emotional toll of serving their country. These veterans were often forgotten by society once they left the military. But Sarah wasn't the type to just sit back and complain. She had decided to take action. She had started an initiative to provide support for her fellow veterans, focusing on helping those who were often overlooked. It wasn't easy. Funds were limited, and the government wasn't always as responsive as it should have been. That's when Sarah decided to do something bold. She would take her message to someone who had the resources to make a real difference, someone who had the power to change the lives of countless veterans. As former President Donald Trump walked onto the stage to give his speech, Sarah's determination grew stronger. She had waited for this moment for months, and now it was finally here. She was going to hand him an envelope, but this was no ordinary envelope. Inside, there was something that could change the lives of thousands of veterans, something that could make a real difference in the lives of people who had given everything for their country. Sarah waited as Trump greeted the crowd, his usual charismatic self. The energy in the room was electric, with cameras flashing and people applauding. But Sarah wasn't paying attention to the applause. She was focused on the man at the podium. She had made up her mind. As the speeches went on, Sarah made her way toward the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. She was ready. This was her chance. When the time was right, Sarah stepped forward. The security team immediately noticed her approaching, but they didn't stop her. There was something about her presence, something about the way she carried herself, that made them hesitate. She walked with confidence, her eyes locked on Trump as she made her way toward him. As she reached the podium, she extended the envelope toward him. The room fell silent. Trump, momentarily surprised, reached out and took the envelope from her hands. The crowd watched, waiting for what would happen next. Sarah, standing there in front of the man who had once led the country, looked him straight in the eyes. For a moment, neither of them said a word. It was as if the world had paused, and all that mattered was the moment between them. As Trump opened the envelope, he glanced at Sarah, then back at the contents inside. The room remained silent, and all eyes were on him. He unfolded the letter, and as he read, his expression shifted. His usual confident demeanor softened. There was something in Sarah's letter that had caught him off guard. As he continued to read, his eyes moved across the words that spoke of sacrifice, of service, and of a nation's duty to honor its veterans. The letter wasn't just a plea for help. It was a call to action. Sarah wrote about her time in the Air Force, the struggles she had faced, and the struggles of her fellow veterans. She spoke about the obstacles women in the military often faced, about the difficulties of returning to civilian life after serving, and about the need for more resources to help veterans transition into their post-service service lives. Sarah also outlined the work she had been doing, providing counseling, financial support, and housing assistance to veterans. But she needed more help. She needed someone with power, someone who could make a real difference. When Trump finished reading, he looked up from the letter. There was a moment of quiet contemplation, and then he spoke. "This is incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "Thank you for your service, and thank you for reminding us of what really matters. I'll make sure your initiative gets the support it needs." The room erupted in applause. But for Sarah, it wasn't about the applause. It was about making a difference. It was about giving her fellow veterans the help they deserved. And in that moment, she knew her mission had only just begun. In the days that followed, Trump's office worked with Sarah to ensure her initiative received the support it needed. Funds were allocated, and a nationwide campaign was launched to raise awareness for the challenges faced by veterans. Sarah's foundation grew exponentially, helping more veterans than she could have ever imagined. And what started as a simple gesture, handing over an envelope, had turned into a movement. For Sarah, the gesture was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts can have the greatest impact. It wasn't about asking for a handout. It was about standing up for what was right, for those who had served their country and deserved to be seen. And as she watched her foundation grow and saw the lives it changed, Sarah knew that she had achieved something far greater than she had ever expected. Through one simple act of courage, she had inspired a nation to honor those who had sacrificed everything. And for Trump, the experience left a lasting impression. He would never forget the retired Air Force pilot who handed him an envelope that changed not only his life, but the lives of thousands of American veterans. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories of courage and change.